Welcome to the Dubai Startup Ecosystem Chat, powered by Dubai Chamber of Digital Economy. I'm your host, Pierrick Ribes. In today's chat, we are delighted to welcome Asma AlQaseer, founder of FirmFox, but also an avid investor. Get ready for some great insights. Asma, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Could you maybe start by introducing yourself?
Sure. So my name is Asma AlQaseer. I'm Emirati, born and raised in Dubai, and founder of FirmFox as of a year and a half now.
Let's start with your journey. What motivated you to found FirmFox, and what problem in the legal and business setup sides were you aiming to solve?
So I've been, as you mentioned, on the investment side. So I used to work a lot with startups, and I used to hear a lot of the pain points of these startups. And a lot of them had to do with business setup, navigating that whole journey, where's the best place to do it. And so because it was such a recurring theme, fast forward years down the line, I decided to do something in that space to kind of ease the journey, specifically for entrepreneurs and investors coming in from outside of the country.
From your point of view, what makes FirmFox different from a law firm, from a PRO service, and how do you see your role evolving as more founders enter Dubai?
Yeah, so look, I think in the UAE we have over 40 jurisdictions, right? All of them have different requirements, and navigating that becomes super complex. Today in the market, majority of the corporate service providers or the PRO services are predominantly offline. You do have some initiatives that are online, but they're specific to an emirate. And so what we've done with FirmFox is done something like that is UAE wide, right? So we've taken mainland jurisdictions and free zones and put that on a digital portal. So that's the main, I would say, difference that you have compared to the other PRO services or the corporate service providers. On top of that, what we really wanted to focus on is giving the power back to the entrepreneur. So, traditionally speaking, with corporate service providers, they tend to give you advice based, it's a bit biased based on where they're going to get the kickback from a certain jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Not always the case, but a lot of times it's commercially driven. And what we wanted to do was give that option to the entrepreneur, where you get shortlisted based on the criteria that you chose, your business activity, that you choose which one is the right one for you. And so I think that's another major difference that we have on our platform.
Yeah, shifting the model on his head a bit.
Exactly.
I didn't know PRO were getting kickback sometimes.
Exactly.
Very interesting. And then if we're looking at FirmFox, what are the different products and services that you guys cover?
Yeah, good question. So besides company setup, we realized, another major pain point for entrepreneurs was corporate bank account. A lot of them have faced issues opening a corporate bank account. They've had a license for a year, but haven't been able to invoice or get any money because they didn't get the right structure, didn't get the right license, and the banks won't be able to open it for them. So what we've done is we've also mapped out the journey in terms of banks and what they want to bank. So business activities that they like and some that they don't. So you'd have some banks in the UAE that say, you know what, anything that's crypto related, we are not in that space. We don't want to see it. And some banks are saying, actually, this is something that we're very interested in. And so what we did is we had conversations with several banks in the UAE, and we said, okay, let's map out that journey. What does that look like for you? Is there a specific turnover for these businesses for them to be potential clients of yours? And because we're that first touch point for the entrepreneur, we know, and that business, we already understand what business activity they're in their domain. We're able to guide them in that corporate setup. On top of that, we started partnering up with different service providers because obviously, as you're setting up the business, you have so many different requirements. Another big one in the UAE is corporate tax registration and VAT registration. Mm-hmm. So we don't do that in-house. We're not professionals at it. We work with partners in the UAE that are able to fulfill that service. But what we wanted to do was have a suite of different services that companies need, that we become that touch point for them. A lot of people say, listen, I don't want to talk to 15 people when I'm setting up my business. I'd rather just speak to you and you help me sort out all these different other things. So then there's also accounting and bookkeeping. We have co-working spaces that we've partnered up with a local firm here. We have a few other services, even to real estate. So we've had people coming in from outside of the UAE, investors who say, listen, for tax reasons, we are moving. We also want to buy property. I also want to obtain a golden visa. Help us find property. And that's not our forte. And so we went out on the market and started looking for partners. And so that's where we landed. So we started building that suite of services. Now, one feature that we recently rolled out was focused on existing businesses. So say you have an existing business you didn't set up with FirmFox, but you still want to benefit from a digital platform. So instead of you dealing with a PRO on WhatsApp and sending a renew this visa for me or my trade license, you're able to onboard yourself on the platform, and you're able to do all these service requests on a digital platform. So it acts as your PRO, digital PRO, but also your document depository, like a digital document depository for everything business related to your company.
Very interesting.
Long answer, but I hope I answered.
No, very good. Because that's also what I wanted to understand better. So a one-stop shop almost.
More or less.
And adding to it every single day. When you're looking at your customer base, do you also have companies that are transplanting here, like big corporations that are...
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have everything. We've seen everything from freelancers who want some structure to be able to invoice and have a corporate bank account, all the way up to international companies who are looking to have some sort of regional HQ in the region.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've dealt with both. Some need more hand-holding than others.
Oh, really?
And some are just very quick to understand the landscape.
As an Emirati woman building a firm in the legal and advisory space, did you encounter any unexpected challenges or sources of support?
Sources of support, to be honest, many. Challenges, I would say the only challenge I faced is the pace at which the regulation changes. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, right? As a country, we're very adaptable. And so our regulation changes quite often, and that kind of impacts the business, whether this visa's on the market, it's not on the market, business structure changes. So in that sense, keeping our platform up and ready and constantly updated has been a challenge. But in terms of support, honestly, I've gotten amazing support from so many different people in the ecosystem, from law firms, from PRO companies, from government entities, from free zones themselves, who are welcoming this idea of, digitizing the space and making it super easy for investors, entrepreneurs to set up their business here.
You've worked with many startups in Dubai. Where do you see the most confusion or delay in the licensing or incorporation process?
I think not knowing what business activity they really want, what kind of structure, and then not having the right documents in place. That usually causes a lot of delay. Certain degrees, let's say they need to be certified, attested, and things like that. So if those documents are not all in place from the get-go, it kind of delays the process and people get frustrated with that. But if you had it from the get-go, then it's just a 5-day, 1 week kind of...
a smooth process.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, when you have the documents ready, it's,
yeah.
If you know what documents you need ahead of time.
Exactly.
Which your platform would provide, I'm assuming.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've actually integrated an AI chatbot on the platform. What we realized is people had questions along the setup journey, and I wanted to avoid the cost of running a call center. And I wanted to optimize the platform and use more technical capabilities, let's say. And so we built this chatbot, the Fox Chat, and we fed it with a lot of these frequently asked questions. We fed it with commercial laws in the UAE. And the idea is support these entrepreneurs as they're setting up on the platform with any of these questions that they might ask. What documents do I need? Do I need to have an Emirates ID before I set up? If I wanted to get health insurance, does that come with my... All of these frequently asked questions have now been fed into the system. So you're able to use that for free as you're setting up.
You were talking about one of the main source of confusion is the business structure.
Yes.
So when you talk about business structure, you mean LLC? Things like
LLC,
that.
so the legal type of the business, how many partners they want in the business. Is it an SPV? Are we going to do a holding company and then an operating company under it? Is it an international one that needs to be a subsidiary here? Or is it a standalone entity? So things like that need to be discussed internally with the management. Obviously, we support in those discussions. But these are things that need to be decided on before they set up.
Okay. So that's the kind of the advisory piece or the hand holding that you guys do when it comes to figuring out that. Because that's kind of like one of the first steps.
Yeah. So a lot of people, specifically companies that are based internationally, whether it's the UK, France, or they're looking to set up for tax purposes, let's say, an entity here. Do we do a separate entity completely, or is it a subsidiary of our French entity? How does it work? And for tax reasons, what are the best ways to structure it and make sure that we're legally compliant and all these things?
Okay. So I think that feeds nicely into the next question, which is mainland or free zone? What are the biggest misconceptions founders still have when choosing where and how to structure the company? We already touched base on that a bit. But can you expand on that?
There are several misconceptions, right? The laws have changed in the UAE. Previously, you had to have, let's say, UAE national as a 51% shareholder in mainland licenses for you to operate your business. That's no longer the case, right? There are some specific, let's say, strategic business activities where you still need a local sponsor, 51%, but more or less, I would say 90% are no longer the case, where you can 100% be a foreign owner. So that's one misconception. I think the second is, with mainland companies, you're able to do business with government entities in the UAE, more B2C approach, whereas free zone, you can do more free zone entities and serve international businesses. So it's these small details that people miss. Another one would be, I think, on the bank account. With some free zones, sometimes it can be difficult to open your bank account. And a lot of people would say, okay, cheapest option, let's just go for it, and then we'll figure out the bank account later. That really hurts the investor and the entrepreneur down the line. Because when you have to restructure or get another license, that's another chunk of money that you need to put down. Okay. So it's things like that kind of the misconceptions on the market, I would say.
Okay. Can you talk a bit about dual license? Because that's another thing which is interesting between, I know some free zones support dual license, mainland and free zone. Can you talk a bit about that?
So I know this was rolled out not too long ago, right? The ability for you, if you are a free zone company and you want to do business B2C in the mainland, there was a push from the government to kind of ease that process. So there are some activities where you're able to have a dual license or some free zones that support that. The idea is they want to ease the way of people are doing business in the UAE today.
What regulatory and compliance requirements have changed in the recent years for tech startups or foreign founders?
Absolutely. So I think one thing we mentioned was the 100% foreign ownership.
Yeah.
Another one is the requirement to have your VAT and corporate tax registration. So I know some of the free zones actually they're called qualified free zones, where you don't have a threshold to be eligible for corporate tax. So there are different nuances here between free zone and free zone. There are probably several others, but I can't think of them right now.
The tax threshold that you've been talking about, would you say that plays a role in the competitiveness between free zone?
Not really.
Not really?
No.
Okay.
I mean, maybe to some businesses, but to be honest, from what we've seen, people are just looking to set up here regardless.
Fair.
This is a safe haven for a lot of companies.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah.
Even as an
you
employee.
you as a French national, you must have seen this, right? With a bunch of French companies coming here in the past few years.
Yeah, 100%. Even now with the 9% corporate tax, like it's still so much more efficient than what you'd have back in Europe.
Exactly.
So it does make sense. Have you seen a shift in what founders are prioritizing when setting up a business in Dubai, whether that is speed, visa, capital requirements, or anything like that?
Always. I think we've become such an efficient ecosystem. Just look at the level of service that you get in the UAE and Dubai, right? Everything has been done on an app, and you can have almost anything delivered to you within 2 hours. So I think people got used to that standard, and people just want things done yesterday.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the main priority here, which is understandable.
Yeah,
the rate of growth that we have, the level of service that we have, it's only fair that, we try to achieve these targets.
Yeah. Okay. Speed.
Exactly.
Because it's speed and also avoiding speaking to very different, like many different people.
Exactly. I don't want to talk to 15
on the phone,
different
WhatsApp.
People to get one thing.
That's when
don't email me, call me, and WhatsApp me at the same day. Let's just have one conversation and get it done.
And that's when the digital platform makes
exactly
a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
Everything goes online.
But that's not everyone, right? I'm not going to say everyone in the UAE is like that.
Yeah, of course.
You still have people who want to speak to someone on the other side of the phone. And there are people who would prefer, I don't want to deal with anyone. I'd rather deal with the chatbot, with your platform.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah, fair.
So we have both
to
make sure that we cater to the different types of customers.
Yeah. What's one red flag that you see too often in startup company formation that ends up being too expensive or complicated to undo later?
Just getting any license for the sake of speed and not really thinking it through, right? So then you have to go back, restructure, get rid of this license, go for the correct business activity that's actually related to your business, structure it in the right way, make sure that that activity will allow you to have, let's say, a corporate bank account, so on and so forth. So we've seen that many times.
And then often when you change your license, you have to change your bank as well?
To a certain degree, it's a different account.
So a different account?
Yes.
Okay. So I can explain also the pain of
exactly.
with your suppliers and stuff.
Yes, it's really hectic. The whole process is just not fun. And keep in mind, every entity, so banks have their own KYC process. They have their own regulatory requirements, right? So the way they do things is with their own speed. So imagine you as a business trying to invoice and trying to operate and trying to get things up and running, and having to go through all these different hurdles and not having the right setup makes you start from square one.
Dubai has ambition of becoming the digital economy of the world. From a legal perspective, do you think the system is ready to support Web3, AI, and other frontier tech startups?
Absolutely. I think, I've mentioned to you that we've integrated AI as much as we can on the platform. And obviously, there's so many different initiatives and capabilities as tech advances that we can start also integrating on our platform. And I think as the UAE, as Dubai, we're always hungry to, be at the frontier of technology, AI capabilities and things like that. I mean, you look at the different government initiatives that we have. Minister of AI, we have investments heavily investing in data centers in the UAE. So it only goes to show you where the foresight of the UAE economy is going to be in the government's initiatives.
Do you guys at FirmFox cover, what's the relationship that you have with incubators, accelerators? Do you have a relationship with those guys?
That's a good question. So we actually work with a bunch of incubators and accelerators in the UAE. We've partnered up with them because, as you know, each of them have startups that they incubate or accelerate, right? Cohorts, maybe 2 or 3 cohorts a year, 50 plus startups. And a lot of these guys need to be set up. A lot of these startups have to have their own setup, and each of them is going to have a different requirement, whether they're fundraising, maybe they need to be in DIFC or ADGM. And it's not the bread and butter of these incubators and accelerators to get them legally set up. Okay. And so that's where we come in, and we support them with that whole process, all of the cohorts that they do.
Have you had the opportunities to work with regulators, government entities, or free zones to improve the process, or is that dialogue still missing?
It's an ongoing discussion. We sit down with free zones quite regularly and try to see where we can advance and help each other, right? I mean, at the end of the day, our goal is the same, to support the ecosystem, the entrepreneurial landscape, and try to see where we can speed things up and how to make things more efficient and better. And so we do have regular catch-ups where we try to understand, okay, what are some of the initiatives that you guys are doing to facilitate this? How can we as a startup, because we're agile, we're nimble, support you with that? In terms of tech capabilities, this is what we can do. We'd love to get your support on things like that so we can, integrate our system to yours easily and quicker. So things like that.
Finally, what advice would you give a startup founder setting up a business in Dubai, especially when it comes to getting the legal structure right?
Speak to FirmFox.
Fair. Get some advice.
Exactly. Do it right from the first time.
Yeah.
Save yourself some money and get it right from the first time.
Yeah. I feel like that's the third time we're talking about that specific point, the legal structure, the business structure. Like getting that right seems to be one of the most important things to get right.
Absolutely.
Any final word, any other advice that you would give to startup founders or?
I mean, to be honest, there's so many things you can say. I think I've spoken about this to a certain degree in different podcasts, and a lot of people, when they launch a business, have an idea of what it looks like to launch the business, but it's never usually the case, right? It has a journey of its own. Yeah. And so be prepared for things you weren't prepared for. I think that's the biggest one. And be agile in that perspective.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, very much enjoyed the conversation.
Likewise. So, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
If you enjoyed this content, continue listening or watching to future episodes where we speak to many of Dubai's startup founders, investors, and digital economy and startup ecosystem enablers. Also, the Dubai Chamber of Digital Economy has published an annual startup guide to help answer any questions you may have on how to register and start a company in Dubai. Download the guide now at the Dubai Chamber of Digital Economy website.